Hi, everybody. I hope I'm not late. My watch says 2:14. What time do we have?
That's what I've got here.
Yeah, that's what I
All
have
right,
too.
awesome. Awesome. Okie dokie. All right. All right, well, let me put the PowerPoint on, and we have treat today. We have two presentations. So let me put, let's see, where is my PowerPoint? Right here. Come back here, window. Okay, I need to be able to, let's see, share my screen. So I come back here, share screen. And okay, how is it looking at your end? How is the
Good. One thing, Mr. Niazi, I think you moved
yeah.
your camera because we can only see like your forehead.
Okay, there we go. Thank you. All right, awesome. So we're missing Pippa, I think, right? And as well as Texas, Sawyer, and Taklif. Okay. All right, so everyone can see the Arabic one, spring 2015, week 11A. Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, I think we should get started. Okay, let's get started. I mean, the announcement part, I can tell them separately. All right, so today we're gonna do a review of the nominal sentences, right? Jumla ismiya. And then next time we'll do fi'liya. You guys, it's already clicking. It's already clicking. I can see it. But we'll do a little bit more formal review of the nominal sentence. Then we're gonna do a homework review. Then we have presentations by Oliver and Adam. And then I'm going to do numbers, which chapter 5 presents to you, and we're going to have an overview. And then if we have time, we'll have a review of the take-home quiz, a partial review, and then homework assignments for Thursday. As far as numbers are concerned, I'm hoping to have a quiz on Tuesday where I just read out a number and you get to write it either, you get to write it in Arabic Indian numerals. So for instance, if I say Ahad Ashar, you write 11, two ones, right? So I just want to make sure that you can recognize them. We're not going to stress them this semester, but we can't not do them at all. So they won't be on the final, but we'll have one quiz, again, where I read out a number in Arabic and you get to write it in numerals, in numbers.
Mr. Niazi,
Yes.
one thing is, I thought one of the reasons that we were trying to do like quizzes every week was so that we didn't have a like large final.
Well, it's two things. We haven't been able to have a quiz every week, but I mean, basically what happens is, yes, our final would not be as large as it otherwise would be or would have been had we not had the quizzes. I think there's still, uh, I think there's still room for a final because you guys really, it's to your advantage to have a look at everything and review everything. But it's not going to count as much as it would have otherwise, and your quiz scores are, if you keep up with the material with the quiz scores, with the quizzes, then you won't have a problem with the final. So there won't be anything. How about this? There won't be anything on the final that's not been on the quizzes, for instance. But I think it's really beneficial if you, at the end of the course, say, okay, these are the quizzes I've taken, and these are the mistakes I've made. What is it I don't understand? Let me ask Niazi. Let me ask my friends. What is it that I'm missing about this concept?
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound reasonable to have some sort of final where you guys have to, the take home, for instance, the take home quiz that you had really counted as 2.5 quizzes. So in effect, it was a midterm. And the final is going to be something similar. It's not going to be something huge, but it's going to be something to get you to look at your mistakes and hopefully to prepare you for next semester. For next semester. Any ideas? Any thoughts on that?
Is the final gonna be in like a take-home format, an online format, or just like a traditional format?
I was thinking of having a final in our last class. However, if you want a take-home final, we can discuss that as well. If there's a overwhelming majority of students who want to take a take-home final, we can do it that way. Again, it's going to be roughly 2 quizzes, between 2 and 2.5 quizzes worth of points.
When is our last day of class?
It's the first week of May.
Okay.
So this is the Thursday of that first week. Okay. All right. So maybe, yeah, so we should then consider, now we should talk about the final. Maybe I can send out a questionnaire via email. So we need to discuss the final a little bit further to see what we're going to do. But again, I'm envisioning it to be either in class or a take home, similar to what you had a week and a half ago. All right. So number 1, we need a volunteer for Thursday if anyone wants to avail him or herself of the points for the extra credit points for the presentation. Is there anyone who's willing to go on Thursday?
I'll do it Thursday.
Is this Darden?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Good. And then the other thing is, I sent you so that's Thursday. I sent you the fill in the blank sheet, and it was in Word format, and then I got all the responses back, and everything gets shifted around. So this was a bad idea. So I'll make sure to send it in PDF in the future. The other thing is, I'm virtually caught up with the homework and with the makeup, except for stuff that you've sent in the last 2 days. So if you sent something before the last 2 days and I haven't returned it, then just send me a reminder. And then there'll be a quiz on numbers a week from today. It'll be a dictation where I read something and you write down the numbers and you get to scan and send it to me. All right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now we go on to our let's do a little bit of al-jumla al-ismiya. What's al-jumla al-ismiya? What does that mean?
Nominal sentence.
It's a nominal sentence. What does a nominal sentence consist of in Arabic?
A sentence that start. Oh.
No, you got that, Adam.
No,
you got it.
It's all yours.
All right. Well, it's a sentence that starts with a noun.
It's a sentence that starts with a noun. Very good. What are the parts of a jumla ismiya?
Noun, adjective. Right?
That's a really common form of it. Basically, the parts of it are the noun and the predicate.
Oh,
right?
Yeah,
Right. So that's the most general form. And basically, what we think of when we look at a jumla ismiya, yeah, that's the most general form, is the noun and then the predicate. All right. So it starts with a noun and consists of 2 main parts: the subject of the nominal sentence or the noun, and the predicate, which reports on the subject. All right. Now let's look at some examples. These are from the homework you saw. Who wants to read the sentence in the middle of the sheet?
Mr. Niazi, before we get too far in the lesson,
Yeah.
You should know that right now I'm currently unable to see the presentation. We don't have school today, so I can't get any tech help. We have like an arts festival that we're hosting, and I can only see you and the rest of the students right now. One of my TV screens isn't showing me the presentation, which I usually see.
Okay, well, I don't see a way around it. If you can, I will make sure to send the presentation to you. Do you want me to send it to you, actually? Why don't I email it to you?
That might work best.
Okay, so we're gonna take just 1 minute.
Well, I'm sorry about that.
One quick thing to check is if it's on. I've made this mistake multiple times. Just if there's like a little light in the bottom corner, it'll be on. If it's not, that might be the problem. I don't know.
Yeah, I've fooled around with the TV for the first 5 minutes of class, and I couldn't figure it out.
Also, if you have a laptop, you can just connect through that. And then you'll be able to see everything.
Let me grab one.
Doctors have used radiation therapy.
This is broken.
Okay, so I just went ahead and emailed it. So hopefully one of these methods will work, right?
Okay.
But for people, yeah, go ahead.
I'll sign in and see if I have it now.
All right. All right. So who wants to read the sentence in the middle of the screen? It's a nominal sentence.
Al-Jaw Latif Jidan.
Jamil Jiddan. Yes. Al-Jaw Latif Jiddan. Al-Jaw Latif. So if I were to say, I say this is a nominal sentence, well, what is the noun? What is the subject?
Al-Jawao.
That's right. Al-Jaw. That's exactly right. So the whole sentence translates as what? Yeah. So al-jaw is your noun, right? And everything else is a predicate. It tells you something about al-jaw, right? Now, could a jumla ismiya have a verb? In fact, it can't. What is the verb here that we don't see? There's a verb in this sentence.
To be.
It's the verb to be in the present tense, right? So maybe in your flow chart, once you determine you have an ismiya, the first thing is check to see if it starts with a noun. Aha, ismiya. And then look for a vowel. Is it? And if it's not there, then it must be to be in the present tense. And then basically what it means is you just put an equal sign, right? Equal sign between al-jaw and latif jiddan, between the noun and the predicate. In this case, the weather is very mild, right? And latif is as an adjective, as Jane pointed out. This is a very common. Oh, we lost Jane. This is a very common form of nominal sentences, right? All right. How about this one? Who wants to read this one? Oh.
كندا فيها مناطق باردة.
جميل جدا جدا. كندا فيها مناطق باردة. Right, so it's a jumla ismiya. In this case, it starts with a proper noun. And the question is, what is my noun, or what is the subject of this nominal sentence?
Canada is the subject.
Excellent. Yeah, so everything else must be the predicate. Very nice. Very nicely done. Let's see. What if I make this bigger? Oh, that didn't work. Yes. Very good. Canada is your subject. And what does Canada fiha manatiq barida mean?
It has in it regions, like cold regions?
Yeah, this is Arabic for Canada has within it cold regions, right? So it's a little, if you do it word for word, it's Canada in it are, again, we have to supply the are, cold regions. But in this case, notice the are, so this is the tricky part. Yeah, the verb to be has to go, when you're reading it in Arabic, you should make sure that it's Canada has within it. Yeah. This is a little complicated one, but at any rate, the translation was absolutely correct. Canada fiha manatiq barida. In Canada, there are cold regions. Notice if you do word for word, it sounds really clunky in English. Canada, in it, cold regions. All right, this is a kind of a, I was hoping to leave this type of Jumla Ismiya for Thursday, and we will analyze it a little bit further, but I think we're doing good. So let's keep going. Canada in this case being your subject. All right. So now we have sort of the most general case of Jumla Ismiya. The mubtada, or the subject, can be one of many different things, right? It can be a definite noun, right? For instance, in the sentence "الطالبة أمريكية," what is the subject?
الطالبة.
جميل جدا. الطالبة is your subject, and it's a definite noun. So that's one variety of your subject, right? It could also be a proper name. How would I change this sentence to make the mubtada, the noun, a proper name? It could very easily be Darden أمريكية, أو Jane أمريكية, أو Elizabeth أمريكية, أو Maya أمريكية, right? So in that case, that's also a very common form of a nominal sentence. It can also be a pronoun. How would I change الطالبة الأمريكية so that the subject is a pronoun?
هو أمريكية.
هو أمريكية doesn't quite work, but you're close. Remember, أمريكية is a feminine adjective.
هو أمريكي.
هو أمريكي would work, exactly. هو أمريكي. Or أو هي أمريكية, right? That would be a very good nominal sentence. It can also be a demonstrative. What if I said هذه أمريكية? It would be then, this is American, right? So these are all possible ways of putting that noun at the beginning of that sentence. It has to be definite. It's either definite, a pronoun is considered definite, a demonstrative is considered definite, and also an idafa. How would I say my daughter is Amrikiya?
أنا بنتي.
My daughter would be simply Binti. Binti Amrikiya would work.
Oh, okay.
All right. Binti Amrikiya is a perfectly good nominal sentence. All right. Now let's look at the predicate, or the khabar. Right? The khabar could be an indefinite adjective, like at-taliba tawila. What does that mean, at-taliba tawila?
The tall student.
Not quite. If it was a tall student, it would be at-taliba at-tawila. This is a full sentence.
The student is tall.
The student is tall. Everyone got that, right? The student is tall. It could be an indefinite noun. At-taliba mu'allima. I mean, kind of a strange sentence. At-taliba mu'allima. The student is a teacher. You know, every student a teacher, every teacher a student. Have you heard that saying? Every student a teacher, but this is not that. This just says at-taliba mu'allima. The student is a teacher, right? So these are various forms of the khabar, or the predicate. It can also be a prepositional phrase. Who wants to read the last sentence on the sheet?
الطالبة في الصف.
جميل. الطالبة في الصف. Right? What does that mean, Ya Jane?
The student is in the class.
Excellent. The student is in the class. So these are all different forms of your predicate. Okay? But wait, there's more. Your predicate can actually be a verbal sentence. So who wants to read this sentence here, the first of these examples? I'll read it. Oh, go ahead, Maya.
The first one, الطالبة تدرس اللغة العربية.
Jamil Jaddan. So in this case, what is my noun?
الطالبة.
At-taliba, and it's definite as I like it to be. But then the predicate, notice, would be a standalone sentence. Tadrus al-lugha al-arabiyya is a standalone verbal sentence, right? But it could be the predicate. And this is what makes Arabic so rich. These sentences, there's this recursive, as you're trying to make sense of these sentences, now already you have these patterns in your head and you're really becoming really good at recognizing these, but it takes some practice. Case, at-taliba tadrus al-lugha al-arabiyya is the predicate, which is telling us something about at-taliba, is a verbal sentence, right? And it's on its own. Are there questions about this? You see how it can be a little recursive, that in order for this nominal sentence to make sense, you need to make sense of the verbal sentence contained within it. At-taliba tadrus. Of course, and if this is the case, at-taliba is always your subject, and your verb has to agree in terms of person, gender, number with your subject. At-taliba tadrus al-lugha al-arabiyya. Wait, and there's even more. It can be a nominal sentence on its own, right? And we've seen this again and again. For instance, with Maha, when Maha says, my name is Maha, she says, Ana ismi Maha, right? Which in English just doesn't make any sense. But in Arabic, it's fine because your predicate can be a standalone nominal sentence. Who wants to read the example for the nominal sentence serving as predicate? At-taliba, I'll do it. At-taliba ismuhu Maryam. What does that mean? At-taliba ismuhu Maryam.
The student is called Mariam.
That's exactly right. The student is called Maryam, or the student's name is Maryam. Very good. And Maryam, of course, you recognize it's the Quranic name, not for Miriam, but for Mary herself. At-taliba ismuhu Maryam. Right? And then it gets even more interesting. You can have an idafa construction as the predicate. Who wants to read the last example?
الطالبة هي بنتي.
Jamil Jiddan. What does that mean?
The student is a girl.
What about binti? What about the possessive at the end?
It would be, is my daughter.
That's exactly right. The student is my daughter. And in this case, I put the heya because the heya is optional. If you have your predicate, if your predicate is definite, you need to use the heya or hoa, or to mark it, but or the pronoun. I'm sorry, but for the idafa construction, it's considered definite. But if you're using an idafa construction, how about this? The heya is optional. So at-taliba binti would have worked just fine. But if it was a proper noun, for instance, at-taliba Maryam, at-taliba hiya Maryam. At any rate, we're not going to belabor that. But you see that there's this richness in these nominal sentences, right? Your noun can have different forms, and so can your predicate. Okay, so we've done all of these ismiya sentences. There's one thing we need to look at on Thursday, and then we'll look at the fe'liya, which kind of in a similar analysis, we will look at the fe'liya or the verbal sentences. Okay. I think at this point we should have our presentation, right? We have two presenters. Who wants to go first, Oliver or Adam?
I can go first, Adam, if you don't want to.
I'm fine either way.
All right. So
okay,
I guess I can start.
Yeah. Let me put your presentation. I should have done this before. I thought I had it, but it's not in the.
Yep, there it is.
Okay. All yours, Oliver.
All right. So when we change the slides, can I just say
Next.
Next? Yeah, probably a good idea.
Awesome.
So hey guys, today my presentation is going to be rotating around the Iranian Revolution. However, the approach we're going to take today is not necessarily the most common approach. A lot of people think that the best way to study the Iranian Revolution is just looking at 75 and on. But I think what would be most appropriate is that we trace the event right to its roots, because revolutions don't happen without proper causes. And these causes for this revolution are rooted way back. So we're going to start in the 20s. Next. Can anybody tell me who the gentleman in the left is?
Reza Shah Pahlavi.
Yeah, that's Reza Khan, or Pahlavi, whatever you want to call him. He actually changed his name. He started as Reza Khan, and then he adopted the name of Pahlavi, which was the dynasty that would rule Iran until 79. But what we saw here, that in the 20s, during the commotion that was occurring within Iran, we saw a nation that was split into spheres of influence between the Soviet Union in the north and the British Empire in the south. And what they were battling over is something that people are still battling over in the Middle East, and that's the supply of oil. So the British put this puppet, which they considered would be easy to manage, into power, who was Reza Khan. However, what Reza Khan did was that he embarked his nation into a path of westernization, which allowed him to consolidate more of his power. Next slide. So what Reza Khan basically did is that he instituted policies that included bureaucratic reforms, the institution of primary and secondary education in a university system, the development of a road and rail system, the establishment of a number of state-owned businesses. And he basically took more control of the oil industry within Iran. He even adopted the title of Shah, which is going back to the 5th century BC. It's going all the way back to the Achaemenid dynasty, to the era of Cyrus, to the era of Darius, because he's trying to invoke a relationship that is not necessarily to the Islamic tradition of Islam, but to that went before. He wanted to reflect on the greatness of the Persian Empire. So this, of course, upset a lot of people who had more of a religious fervor, but it did allow the nation to gain more control over its own affairs and to have a better grasp at its sovereignty. However, Mr. Khan did a very bad mistake. Next slide, in the perspective of the Western powers. So basically, what led to the fall of the older Pahlavi was that he had friendly relations with the Axis powers, including Hitler in Germany and Mussolini. And this angered the United States, the Soviet Union, and Britain, because they were afraid if their relations became warmer, it would lead to the Axis powers using Iran as a source of oil. So what they did is that they encouraged the older Pahlavi to oust and to give the throne to his younger son, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, and then he took over. And Mohammad Reza Pahlavi was also, like his father, put into power as a puppet of Western interests. So in the period from like 1943 to 1953, there was huge commotion within Iran. There was a huge instability, and the Shah really didn't have much of a complete control in the affairs of the nation. Next slide. So what we saw happening was basically that there was more of a parliamentary system existing. Democracy returned, and we saw the ulama and the majlis, which are the legislative bodies of Iran, return and gain more political favor and control over the affairs of the nation. And probably the most important personality of this era was Mohammad Mossadegh, who was the leader of the National Front. And what he did was basically is he nationalized the supply of oil in Iran. And of course, seeing that Iran was heavily influenced by the powers of nations such as Britain, this upset a lot of people. And Britain actually asked the United States to intervene and get rid of Mohammad Mossadegh, who became prime minister. And basically, the United States saw this situation in the perspective of the 50s, where Dwight D. Eisenhower was basically favoring the idea of containment. And even though Mohammad Mossadegh wasn't a communist, he did have some slight relationships with the Tudeh party in Iran, which had Marxist ties. So, next slide. What happened next was Operation Ajax, which was something conducted by the CIA. And what they did basically is that they started a revolution against the regime of Mohammad Mossadegh and put him out of power. And even till this day, many Iranians are bitter about this because they saw a democratically elected leader, which was Mohammad Mossadegh, get put out of power just because he was looking out for his nation. By nationalizing the oil supply, he would have brought a more independent and a more stable Iran. So basically, the United States helped outset this regime, which was really looking out for the favor of the Iranian people. And instead, they put the Shah back into power and gave him a more authoritarian ability. Next slide. So what we saw here is that, of course, between 43 and 53, we saw a bunch of disarray in Iranian society. But after Operation Ajax, the United States was able to give a nation to the Pahlavis that was far more stable. And what they instituted was more of a bureaucratic and more of a police state, namely by using a secret police force known as SAVAK, which basically taped your conversations. If you said something against the regime, you might not even see your family the next day. And people lived in constant fear of their regime. Next slide, please. So the Pahlavis, they followed much of the policies that were followed by the older Reza Khan, who was the father of Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. So they encouraged reforms that were Western in nature, including giving more rights to women, giving more modernization, allowing for more state-owned enterprises. However, the problem with the Pahlavis is that even though in 1975 they were able to generate $20 billion a year solely out of oil revenues, they had horrible income distribution. So basically, the wealth that was generated in Iran was kept in the upper tiers of society and weren't really distributed to the average Iranians. If we study revolutions across history, from the French Revolution to the Russian Revolution, when you have a upper class with the majority of the wealth and a lower class with a minute amount of that wealth, that is the perfect situation for a revolution to happen. So these were really the beginnings of the revolution. And next slide, please. So in the short term, the key stimuli for the revolution started in 77. So when Jimmy Carter became president, he came in with an administration that wanted to emphasize human rights overall, kind of alienating themselves from the earlier Republican administrations of Nixon and Ford, who were more about the Cold War era politics and more of the militaristic view. Carter, who was a Democrat, wanted more of a human rights emphasis. And what he basically did is that even though the United States had been supporting the Pahlavis for 3 decades, he started to condemn Mohammad Reza Pahlavi for his human rights violations. And some Iranians actually found hope that maybe the United States would stand. But what happened is that Jimmy Carter actually backed down when he saw that these repressive practices were actually getting worse. And many Iranians were kind of disillusioned, and they saw that the United States basically just let Reza Pahlavi continue with his oppression. So what actually triggered the protests are 3 key events, what really ignited this revolution. But first, I think that the most important thing that we can talk about today is the man behind the revolution, the man who basically is the manifestation of the revolution. And for that, let's go on to the next slide. Does anybody know who this man is?
Khomeini.
Yes, Ayatollah Khomeini. This man basically personifies the revolution. He was the Grand Ayatollah, which is an extremely prestigious role, and he influenced the revolution by not even being in the country. So he had this idea, which he published, which was basically Velayat Efaki, which was an idea of governance. And this idea is basically summarized in this book by Cases in Comparative Politics by Patrick H. O'Neill, who describes it perfectly. And he says that it basically, Velayat Efaki is clerical rule, whereas a monarchy was a usurpation of Allah's rule on earth. A system of government by a clergy trained in Islamic jurisprudence would be a continuation of the political system first established by the Prophet Muhammad. The clergy could serve as a regent in the place of the Mahdi, who would eventually return to reestablish religious and political righteousness. Since such a form of government was only the regime consistent with the will of God, secular forms such as those of the Shah should be overthrown. So he basically provided the rationale of the revolution and justified the abolition of the rule of the Shah.
Oliver, I'm sorry to jump in here. Could you in 2 minutes? Would it be possible for you? Sorry to rush you.
2 minutes?
2 or 3. Yeah, but just you hit your 10-minute, but this is interesting stuff. So
all right. Yeah, I'll try.
Try this. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so he provided the rationale for the revolution. And of course, what Pahlavi did, he exiled him to Iraq. But even then, people were still inspired by him. They saw the nature of a religious government as something that they wanted, contrasting the government, the autocratic government of Pahlavi. Next slide, please.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So the three events that triggered the revolution, that really ignited the protests in 79, because we saw the long-term results, which was the economic split within society of Iran. But then the three short-term ones were, first, there was a huge fire in Cinema Rocks in Abadan in August 1978, where about 400 people were killed. And people actually blamed Savak for this, even though later it would be traced that they weren't responsible for that. But that set people into that paranoia that the government was really looking to kill innocent people and would do anything to maintain its rule. Next slide. Due to that fire, this really ignited a series of public protests who were just protesting the whole condition. And what the Shah miscalculated was that he set martial law, and he wanted to prevent people from going out in the streets. And this was the first real act of defiance from the Iranian people, where they actually went out on the streets defying Savak, defying the administration, and they took to the streets of Tehran and demonstrated. And this led to scores of people being killed as Savak confronted these people, and this really was igniting the flames of the revolution. The last event that would really continue the revolution, next slide please, is that as Pahlavi was realizing that the revolution was getting stronger, he thought that having Khomeini in Iraq was too close. So he actually convinced Saddam Hussein to move Khomeini all the way to France. But even this longer distance actually motivated people to protest even larger, and they demanded that Khomeini return to Iran. Next slide, please.
Mm-hmm.
So by late 1978 and early 1979, millions of people were protesting. They were defying the government's law. And last slide, please.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, at this point, I think that the key moment where you saw the transition, by late 78, the Shah had already left Iran. He had abdicated the throne. And at this point, we saw that Khomeini actually returned on February 1st, 1979. And millions of people gathered to join him. And at this point, he was able to institute Velayat Efaki, and then he was able to create the theocracy of Iran that we have to this day, the Islamic Republic of Iran. And even though this is not really the whole story of the revolution, because after the establishment of the revolution, which is the return of Ayatollah Khomeini, we have the bloody establishment and consolidation of the power of this regime, and also the war with Iraq, which took 8 years and took over 2 million lives. So this is really just the basis of the beginning of the revolution. Really, the idea of the revolution continued for years after as it was established, but at least this provides you a general idea of the establishment. of the Islamic Republic of Iran. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Let's have a show of hands. Or rather, let's show our applause. I apologize. Good. Are there questions for Oliver? I have a question. How is Iran related as far as religion to the rest of the Islamic world?
Iran is a Shia nation. About 90% of the country is Shia, 10% Sunni Kurdish. But it is the primary Shiite power in Middle Eastern geopolitics. The other one that has a significant majority is Iraq. But other than that, most countries tend to be Sunni.
That's right. So does everyone know? Thank you for that. Does everyone know the difference between Sunni and Shia? You've all seen an explanation for it. Excellent. So Iran is in fact the one of two nations with a Shia majority, I believe. Where Shia is the official religion. How about that? It's the only. Maybe there might be Yemen or Bahrain. There might be one of the countries of the Gulf that are not that are similar. But Iran has been the sort of the standard bearer for Shia Islam. How long has this been the case? Do you guys know? For about 500 years. So it used to be Sunni like everyone else, but then it turned Shia. Now, why did we? This class, after all, is on Arabic. It's an Arabic class. Why do you think this presentation? I believe it's very relevant to our class. Any ideas on talking about Iranian history in a class of Arabian language or Arabic language? Sorry.
Well, today it seems like Arabic culture has been brought in to constitute the whole Middle East, because there's been so much going on in that area in politics and economic issues and stuff like that. So even though Iran's not technically Arab, it's part of the general sphere of influence.
Well, I would even go further. What makes Arab culture so important to Iran, of course, is Islam, and Arabic being the official language of Islam. So it's very relevant. The other thing to note is, depending on your point of view, as a historian, you could argue that Iran, along with Iraq, has been one of the two major sort of sources or sites of cultural production all through the Islamic world. So even though the Iranians consider themselves as somehow independent, but they've been ever since the arrival of Islam, they've been active participants in the Islamic culture. They've been sort of in the Islamic heartland, and they've created a great many thinkers and great many artifacts and art and books. However, that being said, it's important to note the distinction. I had a thought that just escaped me. Yeah, I mean, this talk is interesting on many different levels, of course. One of the first things that Oliver started talking about was nationalism, and nationalism, of course, is something that you need to, that you could probably spend hours and hours discussing. But does anyone know? Does anyone see the person to the left of Reza Shah or Reza Khan, the one way at the end? Who is the guy with this top hat in his hand?
Is that Neville Chamberlain?
It isn't. No. That is Mustafa Kemal Atatürk.
Oh.
So just as Iran was undergoing its experiment in nationalism, Turkey also was looking at a national identity versus a religious identity, right? And so these things are huge. And of course, oil is huge. So all of the topics and the themes that Oliver introduced in his talk are hugely important for the Middle East today, and they can certainly be discussed for hours and hours and hours. Great. Well, we have 16 minutes. We're going to go now, unless there are questions for Oliver. Oh, the other thing is, In this class, I was going to put Vilayat al-Faqih on the screen for you. The rulership that Khomeini espoused, which is a pretty cockamamie thing. Whenever you think about fundamentalism, it has to be cockamamie because you're assuming this golden age, and well, I'll do an Idafa construction because so this is what that Khomeini introduced is, and so wilayat al-faqih, right? And these words are both Arabic, of course. Could someone give me the root letters for wilaya? This is the guardianship of the jurist. The root letters for wilaya are
Wow, lam, and I have no idea.
Yeah, very good. It's waw, lam, and some sort of vowel, and these vowels are very tricky. And then what about the root letters for faqih? The fa, of course.
Fa, the ka, and then the e.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. This was my typo. This is Vilayat al-Faqih. So it's actually the he at the end. My bad.
Oh, okay. So it's fa,
the
ka,
H at the
and ha.
Yeah. So again, this tells you what a great debt that Iranian culture owes to Arabic, because after all, the official religion is Islam. All right. So now we go to and this term means the guardianship of the jurist, and it's a very old-fashioned and ineffective way to govern. Okay. So now we go to let's go to Adam's presentation. Adam, all yours.
All right. So just next for going to the next slides. Okay. So this presentation is not quite as serious. This one's about sort of Arab camels. So one of the most iconic things when you think about the Arab world is the camel caravans. So in ancient Arab times, about 1,000 years before Common Era, you had the invention of methods by which to saddle camels. Now, this was an incredible feat because this allowed for the transport of goods across the great deserts that exist in the Arab world. Now, this allowed for a link between India, China, and the European world, as well as groups such as Persia. This brought in an incredible amount of revenue through the spice trade and also allowed for the communication of ideas and technology. So next slide, please.
Mm-hmm.
So it began around 1000 BCE. They were the only animal that were capable of making this long journey through the desert. This is because they could store vast amounts of water in the humps that they have. The humps bind with the water and allow for large amounts of storage. And it allowed them to play a crucial role in times all the way from before the Roman empires all the way up through China. Before the Roman empires all the way through to really the sailing of Christopher Columbus. Next slide, please.
Mm-hmm.
So, is it possible to zoom in just a tad on that?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So this slide illustrates the Silk Road trade routes. Now, the Silk Road was one of the largest trade routes. This was what was used to bring goods from China and India into Europe. These included spices, silk, textiles, and all sorts of other goods that were incredibly valuable. They came through the Persian and Arabian areas and then through Constantinople into Europe, where they were bought. This provided an incredible amount of revenue for the Arabic world, and it also gave them a major power because they controlled all of this trade. One of the main things that actually drove the sailing of people like Christopher Columbus was an attempt to find alternative routes to bypass the Arabian control. Next slide, please. So the trade was conducted mainly by the Bedouin tribes. These are nomadic people who lived in tents and traveled with the camels. Their lives really revolved around these camels that they bred, sold, and they had a very nomadic lifestyle that was very family and tribe oriented. Next slide, please. This is an image of a Bedouin family and their camels. So you can see the tent in the background. This would be packed up, and then they would move on from place to place as they were trading. Next slide. So trade went all the way from the time of Alexander, straight through the fall of Rome, and even after the sailing of Christopher Columbus. And it was mainly a dominance in the spice trade and the textile trade. Next slide. So a couple fun facts. The Prophet Muhammad was actually a merchant. It was one of his sort of main things. He traveled with camels. Camels can live up to 50 years, and they can achieve speeds of around 40 miles an hour at max, and they can drink 53 gallons of water in 3 minutes. One of the main important things is that camels were essential to the Arab lifestyle. They were an incredibly important animal, and they were also used in warfare. Next slide, please. That is a picture of a camel. So there are two types of camels: the Dromidian camel and then the Bactrian camel. The Dromidian is the one-humped, and the Bactrian is the two-humped camel. Next slide, please. And the Dromidian camel weighs about 1,100 pounds, whereas the Bactrian is about 2,000 pounds. And they can carry far more than a horse could ever carry. They were used really throughout, right after they were domesticated and saddled, all the way through to the time of the British Empire. They were used with sword warfare, and then later with guns. There were actually cases where they were basically mounted with cannons. Next slide, please. They were comparable to any European war horse, and the fact that they did not have to drink as much meant that they could go for far longer periods of time in the field and made them an incredibly reliable mount. Next slide, please. So camels and trade were incredibly important and influential in the Arab world throughout history, and it is one of the main things that we think of when we think of the Arab world. We think of the camel trains that transferred trade, ideas, and technology across the European, Asian, and Indian world for many, many, not centuries, but millennia.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's have applause.
It was like big.
Sorry, I was waiting for your conclusion or for a concluding statement, but I didn't mean it that way. But it was a very good presentation. Thank you. Let's have questions for Adam.
I don't know if this is really a question, but I was just thinking about the domestication of camels and what, like, I've been thinking about this for a while. What would the challenges be? I don't know if you know the answer, but like, because camels seem pretty chill to begin with. I don't know.
They actually can be pretty ornery.
Yeah, they're very large animals, which, so they're very dangerous because they're far taller than a human being and they weigh an incredible amount. I mean, if you think about the kick of a horse, it's capable of killing a man in one blow. It's the same thing with a camel. They also they can bite and they're incredibly fast. So they have the potential, and they can and have killed humans. So it's really it would have had to be something that would be done very carefully over time. There's no real way of telling when it were first domesticated or how it was done. It's the same thing with how did we domesticate dogs. There's many speculations on how it could have happened, but just something that happened over time.
Thank you.
Where did it happen, Adam? Do you know? And this is the map. We have Arabia, the Arabian Peninsula. Then we have Persia. We have India, Mongolia, China. Where did the domestication of the dromedary, which is the Arabian camel, where did that happen? Because the Bactrian camel, as you pointed out, is a separate species.
Yeah, it lives in that's sort of South Asia, isn't it?
Bactria would be this area here. Did you guys see my mouse now? It's going to be northeast. It's going to be Central Asia. So where the map has Kabul, which is in Afghanistan, Merv, which is in Turkmenistan, Kashgar, which is in China today, actually. It's going to be in that area. That's the area of Bactria, part of the ancient Persian Empire. So that's where the two-humped camel was domesticated. But then the one-humped, single-humped dromedary, that would have been probably in the Arabian Peninsula itself. And I read a little bit about this. They may have actually, I can give you a reference, but it was obviously the domestication appears to have been a result of wanting to use the camels as a food source before they discovered what a wonderful source of transportation they were.
People often still use camels for their milk. It's an incredible source of protein and all kinds of vitamins and nutrients. There's actually, it's very rare in the United States, but it's still very popular in Asian and Arab cultures. And then also, just sort of side note, relatives of the camels are the alpaca, the vicuna, and the llama, which are native to South America and have been brought up to North America.
Right. So these are all New World animals. So the split must have happened many millions of years ago when these land masses were all contiguous. But the other thing, it's interesting when you look at this network of the Silk Road, which, as you say, goes before Islam. This is way before. This is before the armies of Islam exploded out of the Arabian Peninsula. That trade was actually going on between China and Rome, and it's really, again, as with Oliver's paper, your paper introduces these themes that can then be developed into long discussions. It'll be interesting to know which parts of these routes were traversed by the Bactrian camel and which parts were done by the dromedary, which again is native of the Arabian Peninsula. Very good, very good. So let's have applause for both speakers again.
I have a question for Adam.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Would you repeat the thing you said about the water, the amount of water they can drink in like 3 minutes? I was sitting down when you said that.
Oh, yeah, it's like 34. I think it's like the six. Yeah, it's 53 gallons of water in 3 minutes.
Whoa, that's ridiculous. I also want to know how they know that.
I would imagine just watching one. It's a phenomenal amount of water. I mean,
I guess
that's
after
enough.
that much time without drinking, they're like really thirsty. So that's
right. That's one of their adaptations, right? They're very well adapted to desert life. Yeah, go ahead, Adam.
That's what the humps are for. It's they're mounds of fat that's where they sort of bind the water and store it. It's what allows them to traverse the deserts.
That's so interesting. That's crazy, though.
Yeah, it is crazy. Both speakers, thank you again. Thank you again. And now I'm going to, since we have a couple of minutes, let's go and look at the homework for Thursday. Let's go. So homework. This is just a listening exercise. So there's a tape, a video, an audio file. Listen to the numbers and follow along. And then read the note. It's on the same page, numbers 11 to 100 with nouns. It's on page 102 of the book. Again, the idea is just preparing you for a quiz on Tuesday. And we're not going to do overkill with the numbers. We're just going to look at them, and then we will have one quiz, and then we'll leave them. And then the other thing is, let's do Chapter 5, Exercise 7, page 97. This is the second half of the vocabulary for Chapter 5, okay? All right, since we have a couple of minutes, let's go now. We're going to change a little bit. Let's go to Well, I was going to do numbers, but we'll do numbers next. We'll do numbers on Thursday. Let's look at our take-home quiz. How do I say in Arabic, the family is large? This is a nominal sentence.
Aila or Aila Kabira.
Good. Kabira. I like your predicate. I like your predicate. I don't like your subject though. It's indefinite the way you said it.
Should it not be? No, I'm confused.
You want it to be definite, right? Because the beginning of your nominal sentence.
The predicate should be.
No. The predicate. No. I'm talking about the noun itself. You said Aila Kabira.
Oh,
you
I meant
al-aila. Al-aila kabira. I have al-usra kabira, right? So this is your very, very basic nominal sentence in Arabic. Definite noun, indefinite, in this case, indefinite adjective here. All right. Now, why is al-usra al-kabira wrong? This translates to.
Doesn't that translate to the large family?
That's right. So this is Arabic for the large family. Say the family is large, you have to say al-usra kabira or al-aila kabira. Very nice. How do I say the girls are beautiful? This actually was not in the test, but.
Al-buntun jamila.
That would be the girl is beautiful. Very nice. But I want the plural. So it's going to be al-banat jamilat, right? Al-banat jamilat, right? So I want to make sure that the predicate agrees in number and in gender. But then Arabic is very weird because the cities are beautiful becomes what? Al-mudun jamila. Two things have happened, right? Two things have happened here. First of all, cities gets to its own weird broken plural, which you just have to memorize. And then, why is the predicate in singular rather than al-mudun jamilat?
Because it's a non-human.
It's a non-human plural. So you have to keep track of multiple things for this sentence. And this sentence threw a number of you for the take-home quiz. And we ran out of time, but we'll continue with this on Thursday. Okay, so have a wonderful afternoon, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the speakers again. Bye-bye.